We're checking out some of the do-it-yourself black powder lube that I mix up here that I use on the end of the chambers when we're shooting the black powder revolvers. Now the temperature here is right around 100 degrees, 96. It's cooling down a little bit. I want to cool down just a little more so I can check the consistency of this stuff. I'm using about 1/4 to 1/5 beeswax in this, and if we get too much wax in there, when it cools down, it'll be too stiff to actually, I think, lubricate the inside of the barrel the way it needs to do to keep the fouling soft. And the other situation we'll get if it gets too stiff, it will not work in my mini lube gun here that I kind of have been using. One like this the last couple of years. I've used this one over here actually for the last 2 or 3 years. And it's worked well, but it's getting kind of, threads are getting cross-threaded in here, and it's kind of a mess to load back up again. And this little fellow here has been working really well the last week or so. So we're happy with that. But like I say, if that lube gets too stiff, weather gets too cold or whatever, it will not allow it to get up into the barrel here where the plunger can actually shove it out the nozzle. So that's the second reason that I don't want that stuff to be too stiff. So as far as what I use in the lube here, I use neat's foot oil, 100% pure. Don't use the compound. The olive oil of some sort, Crisco, and then I got the beeswax, of course, in there. So these two items probably you can steal out of the kitchen someplace, so you're not going to add that in the cost of the stuff if we're looking at what the price is going to end up to be. But you're going to have to probably buy your neat's foot oil and also your beeswax. And I kind of run some rough numbers on that, and I'm getting about 50 cents an ounce when you mix your own stuff up here compared to maybe $2 an ounce if you purchase the stuff. Not saying this stuff will do a better job, but it's kind of fun to mix up, and if you're shooting a lot, it is going to make a difference as far as the costs go, especially when you're lubing the end of the chambers, and that takes quite a bit of lube. So anyway, that's kind of what I've been doing, and if you're interested in how I mix it up, I have a video out there on doing that, and I'll leave a link to that in the description of the video here. Okay, this has cooled down to about 90 degrees. We might think it's too hard if we go whacking on it, but what we're end up doing with the stuff is kind of scraping it off like this, and it'll kind of turn into more of a putty or a Vaseline consistency, and that's kind of the way I like to see it. Now this might be a little too stiff. The advantage would be if you're shooting in hotter weather, you won't have as much problem with stuff going liquid on you. So anyway, I think this is going to be just fine for my use. I know a lot of folks have been mixing this stuff up way before I even started, and they have some pretty good formulas, pretty good methods that they use themselves. So, but this is more or less for people that might be going to just starting out into it or want to get into maybe mixing their own do-it-yourself lube. You can also, of course, purchase lube, and that'll work just fine too. Now, in that video that I left hopefully left a link to in the description, I've got more or less the percentages of these things that I use in that, and you got to tweak them a little bit to get the consistency that you want. This is cooled down to about 90 degrees right now, and looking at that, by whacking on it here, I'm thinking maybe it's too hard, but I can shove the knife in pretty easily to it. I think it's going to turn out about right for my use anyway. A little stiffer is maybe better if you're in hot temperatures, you're shooting at 90 or 100 degrees or something like that. Your container, whatever that's in, gets out there in the heat. If it's too loose, it's going to go liquid on you, and that's not going to be a good thing. My temperature got down to around 60 degrees last night. I think this lube is around 62 or so, so I wanted to check to see if it's still okay as far as being able to have this stuff loose enough so it would fit into my mini grease guns. I don't want it too stiff, don't want any chunks in it, so I'm having to work it some with an edge or something. I suppose you could smash it too with something else. You got to get this stuff work like this. It seems like once it softens up, it'll stay that way. I've got some lube here from a couple years back that we made, and even though that goes through freezing over the winter time and stuff, lower temperatures, it still stays in this kind of a Vaseline state. But if you went ahead and poured the stuff liquid into, say, a mini grease gun or something like that, it's definitely going to be in a chunk form. Not sure if it's crystal structure of the beeswax or whatever, but once you break that down, it seems to work pretty well. So I think this lube that I've got here is going to work okay for me. Maybe a little stiff, but I'd rather see it that way. If I do it in some hotter temperatures or something like that, then it won't get too soft for me. So anyway, I wanted to show how that's done. Should also mention that the green color is due to a bullet lube that I ended up getting here from a friend of mine that was selling some online. And I'll just take maybe 2 or 3 like sugar cubes full of that size and put it in with the mix, because I haven't had much luck trying to use food coloring when I'm mixing my lube up. So thought I'd mention that. All right, let's load her up. Should be enough to give us another test here. I think that feels pretty solid, so this would be kind of nice because I'll kind of get some idea how much lube I got left in the mini grease gun here. Suppose a person could make a nice leather sheath for this thing, something around there, but kind of nice. Let's see if we're back in business. Yeah, I think this thing's working pretty good. So anyway, hopefully this has been helpful and you'll find the information useful.